Welcome to episode 13 of the Guerilla Social Work Podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Alpha Counseling and Treatment. Alpha Counseling is the largest and most respected provider for justice-involved clients in need of sexual offense-specific treatment services. Alpha is also a JRI-certified agency providing moral recognition therapy and substance use disorder treatment to justice-involved clients. You can be confident that the treatment you will receive with Alpha will help keep you out of the criminal justice system. Alpha clinical professionals are trained and certified in cognitive behavioral interventions for sexual offending. This evidence-based program teaches participants strategies for avoiding sexual offending and related behaviors. The program places a heavy emphasis on skill-building activities to assist with cognitive, social, emotional, and coping skills development. For more information, check out their website today at utahsbesttherapy.com, or you can call them directly at 801-645-5455. This episode is also brought to you by Triple S. Triple S provides scientific outcome measures for clinicians in the field of behavioral health. Outcome measures provide direction for both clients and treatment providers using evidence-based practice. Any program not using outcome measures to track their clients' progress and success has been scientifically proven to be less effective. And lastly, the Guerilla Social Work Podcast is brought to you by Hoddyware. Do you like to be left alone when you are working out? Are you sick of people bothering you when you're just trying to get your sweat on? Well, Hoddyware is activewear for people who just want to work out without the small talk and all the nonsense. With Hoddyware, you can let your apparel do the talking for you. Check them out today on Instagram. They got their page up and running. It's Hoddyware, Haughty, wear, W-E-A-R. Hoddyware. All right. Got that out of the way. On the episode today, we have Miss Kaitlin Gudicotti is joining us. She is a representative from Brighton Recovery Center. So we had a good conversation with her about a residential treatment setting for substance use disorders. So without further ado, we are going to get into that one. Enjoy.
Seen that either. You guys.
Oh, yeah.
No,
now you're showing your age.
Princess
Hold on a second.
Bride.
You've never seen The Princess Bride?
She's 27.
Okay, I'm
All right.
27.
The podcast is over.
I have seen
Wasn't it-
Princess Bride, but
Never
it
go
was
against a
once,
Sicilian when death is on the line.
yeah, Homeboy's
remember.
a Sicilian in that.
Oh, is he?
The guy that dies.
That's
one of your
that is
countrymen.
That is an obscure reference, though. That's weird that you know that.
That is weird. But
Yeah.
it's okay.
So we'll just stick with Ducati. Ducati's better. I can say Ducati. Judicotti. It's
Gudicotti.
Yeah, Ducati.
You're
Ducati.
adjudicated.
I think of Ducati. I always think of that Genesis game, Road Rash. Remember that?
I love that game. I played that.
That
like
was
a couple months
so
ago.
great, dude. And
That's
then you
still good.
you save up all your money, you win all those races, and then you get into that. What was it? Like a Diablo? Is that was the
Oh
name
yeah,
of
and
then
it goes like too fast.
Yeah, and you can't control the shit.
Yeah, I love all the time you pull up to someone to kick them. You always like kick the wrong way.
Yeah,
Kicks the other side. I'm like, yeah, that's really good.
Caitlin knows nothing we're talking about because
Nope.
Sega Genesis was.
I played Sega Genesis, but I
graphics
played
on your
I
suit.
played like Penguin Land and
I didn't know that.
basic
What is this?
basic games like that on
All right,
Genesis.
Penguin Land.
Penguin Land.
What was the
No.
objective of that game?
It was like a penguin.
well, yep.
What is the objective of any game? It was a penguin, and he was kicking around like a little block of ice, and it was
sounds
cute.
really
It
fun.
was fun.
Yeah, but
it was fun and cute.
I mean, do you do anything with a block of ice? Are
I
you
can't
trying to
remember.
like
You do
save your
something
buddies?
with it. You
You're like
do.
trying to
Kick
build
it
a
around.
house like an igloo to stop a
no,
polar
you're
bear.
not building
Oh,
anything.
that's awesome.
No.
You're like it's like a puzzle game. It's like you kick the ice into different
Kicking
holes to try and make
Man,
the puzzle.
That sounds like it
complete.
changed your life.
Now
That
it
sounds
did.
so exciting. I
Now
wanna
it
leave
did.
right now.
It just clicked that is where everything.
Wait, what's it
changed.
called? Baby Penguin?
Penguin Land.
Baby penguin.
Baby penguin.
I just love Penguin Land. Well, what's the purpose of the game? Well, it's a penguin.
That's all it really was. You're a penguin. You kick around a block of ice.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Miss
Man.
Gudicotti, what is it you do? What do you do?
Other than play
Why do we
really
have
good
you
video
here?
Other than
games.
play awesome games.
Yeah.
like for a living.
For a living, what do you do?
I work at Brighton Recovery Center.
Brighton Recovery Center. And
Yep.
what is it?
In South Ogden
what is
and
it?
in Murray.
You work at both locations?
They actually have 4 locations. So there's
ballin'.
there's a Brighton Recovery Center. They call it the monastery. It's actually a reformed monastery turned drug rehabilitation center.
Where is that?
They actually say that one of the rooms is haunted.
Is it a haunted monastery?
Only one?
They say only one because one of the nuns that lived in that particular
Why does it
room.
always involve a nun?
Because it's a monastery.
Why would?
None.
I thought
Nuns
that was
live
monks.
there.
Was it monks?
No. This was a Catholic
I
type
thought
of-
that's a nunnery. Is that not a
It's a
thing?
nunnery. They call it it's a nunnery, but they call it the
Is that
monastery.
what it's called? I thought you were joking.
Oh, is this the place where they make that honey? That amazing honey? That monastery?
Yeah, penguin honey.
I have no
Penguin honey.
Baby penguin nun?
I have no idea. You know that I've lived in northern Utah for a year.
Whoa.
Where else
here.
have you
I
lived?
didn't know that.
Sicily.
I just barely learned your name.
Sicily, yeah. Southern Utah and then California.
Oh.
Before that.
Where in California?
All over. My dad's CHP, so I lived in Temecula, San Diego, Fresno, Sacramento. Everywhere.
Oh, okay. All right.
I know it's super interesting, but then I moved to Utah. And that's where all the change happened.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the magic land. You're the second person that we've interviewed that started stuff in California and then came to Utah and called it home. Right?
Weird.
Remember how we had Dr. Ha on here?
Yeah.
I wouldn't live in California, dude.
I didn't want to leave. I had to.
Now, look, people talk a lot of trash on Utah. I genuinely like it here, though.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I do now. It grew on me. You know, like it was an honest to God culture shock going from California to St. George, Utah. People weren't super nice to me.
What did they think about your green hair?
Back then it was pink.
Oh, boy.
Has it always been colorful?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I used to do colors in my hair. I mainly bleached it, though.
You have to bleach it out to get like the bright colors.
I just wanted to look
But
like a douche.
You just did the bleach, like
Yeah.
the tips, the cool guy tips.
No, I do it all, and then it'd grow out eventually, you know. I'd
So
look
yeah,
like a total...
it would default into the
Yeah,
tips.
yeah.
You get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, because you have a little period there that was kind of growing out.
That's
but
the high school thing.
Yeah,
It really
dude,
was. I remember doing that.
It was. I did that a lot.
We were listening to like one of the Korn CDs, one of their first CDs. Like, let's bleach our hair.
And bleaching your hair at
Yeah.
the same time.
That
Were
was
you
awesome.
like going hard in the paint with it?
Yeah. No, actually, I was scared because I put it in. It was like burning my head.
It
I was like,
does.
what the hell is
There was
freaking
like
out?
I remember I had to buy an oil that went with it to make it not burn your head. But I remember one time I fell asleep with that shit in my hair. And I woke up, dude, and I had these blisters that were on the side of my
It's
head. It
not
was
supposed to
so-
touch your scalp.
I know, but when you're a dude, you got to get on there. And, you know, it's fashion, son.
When you're a dude, you do got to get on there.
I did it for like a year, and no one told me that like redheads that have blonde eyebrows shouldn't bleach their hair. I looked like an albino. It was rough.
You know what's funny about that? I still have a picture of that somewhere. I have a box of old stuff, and there's one. You're at the 7-Eleven by where we lived at the apartments, whatever the Cardoza.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at that. We were just driving around, and you're like all flexing, like, but you're being serious. You're like doing a thing where you're like,
Non-ironic flexing.
We got like the thumbs in the pocket.
Non-ironic flexing.
Yeah, well, I flex now, but I'm being stupid about it. Oh, yeah. Look at my big neck.
Did he have...
You looked good though.
Did he have just the front part of his shirt tucked in and jabots on?
I wish.
Had that, like that look.
He had Stussies on, dude. Satan's son.
Massimo.
That red sand was the good one.
So what is it you do for Brighton Recovery? What is a client of Brighton Recovery going there for?
They're there for dual diagnosis, so drug rehabilitation as well as mental health.
Awesome. And what does dual diagnosis mean?
Dual diagnosis is where they treat both sides of the spectrum. The drug side, the addiction side, solo, as well as the mental health side, solo, and then they combine the treatments.
I see.
What's the population of clients that you work with?
Right now we have a large population of men. But you know what's interesting about it is it has these huge influxes of lots of men and then lots of women. But it's a huge influx right now during the holidays. A lot of people. We have a huge wait list, way bigger than we've had before.
Yeah. And it's high-end stuff, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all the celebrities?
Yeah. So
I'm sure you're not at liberty to tell
I'm
us
not
all the
at liberty to
celebrities.
tell any names whatsoever.
Tell us.
But
Okay, so just rather than tell us the celebrity, just name a sitcom where they were the starring role.
Can't do that.
Name.
Close, though.
She just falls for it.
She's all Herman's head.
Mob Wives.
I'll bet.
No, absolutely not. I don't watch that show, so I wouldn't even know if that was the case.
You should. It's like mandatory for Sicilians.
For Sicilians?
Like if
I
you're
know,
on
I
meeting,
really should.
you have to watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I have watched that. God.
You love it. Girls love it. Every girl loves it.
No, I'm
Okay,
not a girl.
No?
I don't love it.
Fooled me.
You just said girls love it, and I don't.
Well,
That's it.
secretly, publicly, because she's on a podcast, she wouldn't want to say that. She likes that. But
I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Kim
It's
K.
cool, Katie.
there you go.
Kim K, she's everything to me. But what I do at Brighton Recovery Center is I'm the IOP coordinator, and IOP is intensive outpatient.
All right. So what is intensive outpatient?
So it's
What
a
is that?
levels of care system that they have over there. So the highest level of care is residential treatment, where you're there 24/7. They feed you. You have your own room. And then there's the step down. The step down from that is PHP, which is partial hospitalization program.
Okay.
The partial hospitalization program is day treatment. So they're there Monday through Friday, morning into the evening, and then they have nights and weekends at home.
They're there all day?
They're there all day, just nights and weekends at home.
Oh, right.
That's PHP. And
Partial
then
hospitalization
program.
Okay. got
PHP.
it.
And then the next level down is IOP.
That's where
And
you are.
That's where I work, but I also work the residential. So I will work in the highest level of care, and then the third level down, IOP.
You skip the PHP?
I don't work in PHP right now. They are developing a second PHP program. They have 2 residential centers. They have 2 IOP centers, and then they have 1 PHP program. So I don't work in the PHP program yet.
Okay, so just to make sure I have it right, the main difference between residential and PHP is PHP, they can go home nights and weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the difference between intensive outpatient, IOP, and PHP?
So IOP, for insurance purposes, has to be 9 hours of therapy a week.
That's a lot.
So it sounds like a lot, but when patients have gone through residential and then PHP, when they're in IOP, they feel like, oh my God, I have so much free time. Because the way our IOP program works is they come in Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays for 3 hours apiece.
Oh, so it's way less. Not like, so are the people in the IOP program all step downs from residential, or do you have some people that just are IOP only?
Yeah, we have direct admits as well. So we have had some direct admits. We call them direct because they came just from out there right to us in the IOP program, sometimes straight into the PHP program. But the step downs are the ones that seem, on average, to be more successful.
All right. So let's say that I'm a client. I come and I drop down. Like, what's my intake fee? Or do you guys advertise that? Can I ask you that?
We don't
Or do I need to drop
advertise.
down?
We don't advertise it. And
What's like a monthly rate to go to?
so you're talking residential?
Sure.
Yeah, residential.
Yeah,
I've got a
residential.
big problem. I need to come in, get some help. I need to be in the residential program.
And I got
There-
cheddar.
I got some cheddar. They have some scholarships where you fill out a scholarship form and then you can be admitted depending on how that form goes.
So I say, I don't
But
need that scholarship.
Because I'm
Your
balling.
insurance
Yeah.
is paying for it?
Nope.
Or you're paying out of pocket?
Out of pocket. I'll roll out a
it
fat
rain-
bankroll.
Honestly, it ranges because there's 2 different residential programs and they both have different amenities that they provide. So they charge different rates depending on which
I want
one.
the luxury suite.
That's hard. Okay, my personal preference.
She's really committed to this.
No, really, my personal preference is the monastery where you have a private room.
Okay.
But there's no pool. The other,
But there's honey, though.
what's this
Where did
honey
the- I
thing?
know,
What is the
dude,
honey coming
he's-
from? I don't know.
You look into it.
There's a monastery.
I'm looking at it.
First of all, you're talking about. I think you're talking about the monks up in Huntsville. Or
Yes. I
okay.
guess that wouldn't be right.
Well, why are you referencing
Don't
this?
they all make honey?
Well, first of all,
Isn't that their
Jeff,
main
this
job?
is a reformed monastery. That's
Would you
now
stay on point?
That's
What
a
is
recovery center. Do you think they just left the honey behind, or like, hey, you know what? We're going to give you our monastery, and in return, you have to perpetually make our honey.
It could be some cheesy DBT technique, some in the moment, taste the sweetness, taste the rainbow.
The sweetness.
Taste the sweetness. That's a new one. I like it.
That sounded great.
Dude, you're
Just taste the sweetness.
you're an awful human being.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so your personal preference.
My personal preference is the monastery because you get
High
a
end.
private room.
High end. How much?
They
am I
both are. I don't know the exact number. I'm going to give you my best guess.
Yeah,
I
just
want to
ballpark
say
it.
30 to 40.
Damn, son.
$30
Dollars?
to $40 a month.
Okay.
That's
30 to
pretty good.
40K a month
Yeah.
Holy
Wow.
hell.
is the guesstimate that I'm giving.
So how long? What's the longest somebody's ever stayed there?
An hour.
We've had we have had oh god, since I've been there, because this is actually a very new company too. It's only been around for about 2.5, nearing 3 years. I've been working for them for about just over a year. Since I've been there, the longest I've seen is 90 days.
That's about right. So then you're what? 120 G's deep
Wow.
into your recovery.
So like, and that, well, that's the piece too, is that besides, I guess, being able to put down a substantial amount of money, like what would qualify someone for residential as opposed to just IOP? Like what kind of, how do you figure how to place them? What severity are you looking at? How do you determine that?
So that all goes through the clinical and admissions teams together. What happens is when people feel as though they need treatment, they call us. On my end, what I will do is get them in touch with admissions. Admissions gets in touch with clinical, and then it has to be a clinical decision that they even need the treatment.
And you're saying 9 hours. You guys are using ASAM criteria then, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the American Society of Addiction Medicine placement criteria.
So if they score high enough, boom, residential.
Wow. Okay.
And then what do they have to do? So, Mace, he does his 90 days in residential. Is it just you do your time and then you get stepped down to IOP, or is there something that
So there's case management on property, and what happens is as you get closer to your discharge date, they set you up with appointments weekly as you get closer and closer, and then they discuss with you your aftercare plan. If it includes Brighton, other programs, great. They will help you with both. So we've actually had people that have left Brighton and gone into like Renaissance Ranch, and we have helped them get into those programs.
Is it mainly local people, or is it people from all over the
All
country?
over.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and are any of these people involved in the criminal justice system, or are they there voluntary?
They're there voluntarily.
So they can bounce whenever they want.
Yeah, it's definitely not locked down.
that happen?
I've made
They just dip
jokes.
out?
I've had people run. And I've made jokes about this in my groups. I've said shit like, what the fuck are you running? Because we're not chasing you. They're just going.
It is fun to run from people.
they like
They're just-
legit
but
bolt
they'll,
out
like,
the door?
I have seen people legit bolt out the door and then turn around and look like, oh,
Why
they're not
aren't you
chasing me.
chasing me?
They're not chasing me.
residential is
Fuck.
that. Yeah, we had to chase them. We had to chase them.
I do
down.
not
You
have to
have
chase
kids
them.
though.
Yeah, well, that's just that made it more fun, right?
Yeah.
We do have to call the cops. They're not allowed to be running around the neighborhood.
Wait, what? Really?
Why? What do they?
Yeah.
what they
What's
do
the
wrong?
crime?
Well, are they considered like a high risk kind of thing?
They're considered
I
high
get it.
risk.
High risk.
What makes them high risk? Though?
Because we have mental health as well as addiction
Okay.
in our facility.
Right.
And it depends on the level of severity of the mental health disorders.
Okay.
It's because we're in a neighborhood. We are in a neighborhood. Like
okay.
tucked into a very private neighborhood.
So to kind of keep it high end,
We're keeping the peace with the neighbors as well.
Sure. So you're keeping it high end and nice. I mean, maybe. I'm sure. I think about when we were trying to open up stuff in Morgan.
That was my
Remember
first thought.
Yep.
What a nightmare that was. And doing it in the neighborhood, I mean, people just don't like that. The kind of the
No.
whole not in my backyard type philosophy. And
There's a huge stigma against it.
well, and you could make some. I think we had to make some considerations to the city. You have to actually say, we'll do this, we'll do that. So I'm wondering if it sounds like that. I mean, they're not necessarily committing a crime, but it's a courtesy to say,
Right,
hey,
it's a courtesy.
not like there's a crazy lunatic running around the streets. It's not like the werewolf is out there or something like that.
No.
I'd be curious to know what happens. Like, are they getting picked up in any kind of charge? I mean, like if I voluntarily commit myself to treatment and I come in, I'm sad, plus I like booze, and I gave you my $30,000. then I decide a couple days later, I'm not feeling this, and I leave, you're calling the cops?
It's like I said, it depends on the level of severity with the mental health. So I've had people what that would be called AMA, against medical advice, leaving.
Okay.
Or some say it's LAMA.
LOL, AMA.
LOL, AMA, all of that.
What's LM?
Leaving,
LMFAO.
leaving against medical
LMFAO.
advice.
Wouldn't
If
it be-
they're going AMA, then and they're like walking through the neighborhood, what we'll usually do is just have a staff member go pick them up and say, hey, I'll take you to the bus stop.
Oh.
Like, we're not trying to.
The bus stop. You don't even ride to the airport. 30 G's.
We do. Hey, we do give them rides to the airport, but they typically, if they're leaving on a whim, don't have a ticket.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Right.
So,
Okay,
but
so what's stopping them from just calling an Uber?
they could.
Oh, okay. Do
They
they have
could.
access to phones?
No, when they come on property, there are certain limitations there. They do have access to phones, but not their personal cell phone without their therapist approving it.
Yeah, what are the rules? So no phones.
Don't ask me what the rules are. There's so many rules.
You know what's really weird about that? I mean, there's probably a slew of rules, but it's like it's weird because we think about our clients who are in inpatient treatment, or even everything is like a damn battle with them to get them to follow the rules because everything is so imposed. Whereas these rules, I'm voluntarily stepping into that environment and agreeing to this. You know what I mean? Like I'm agreeing to you for you to take my cell phone. I'm agreeing that I'm going to pay you this money and I'm not going to leave this place. And there's nothing holding me back, right? Which is totally different from the clients that we work with.
Yeah, they very rarely have a fit about anything, the clients that we work with. I mean, because they come into the facility, they know everything that they need to do in order to get well. They give us everything voluntarily. And if they change their mind, we give it back. We're not forcing anything. But there are rules, and they do have a client handbook. They read through it.
Yeah.
And then they decide,
So
okay.
are there like when you say celebrities, are there like movie stars and stuff that go there?
No, not movie stars. People that are well known.
Not even like
I'm not
TV
talking
shows?
like Matt Damon and all those people
Matt
in the
Damon
news
has
never
ever been to a rehab.
So like maybe
not even Tom Cruise, not even
somebody
Suri
that was maybe on
Cruise.
VH1 once.
No,
maybe.
you're all thinking television.
What about
No, not
Carson
television.
Daly?
Carson Daly.
Politicians.
I would just think like if you're getting into like if I was doing like a PowerPoint presentation or something, for my group, I had something up on there, and somebody's like just talking shit or something, I just pull up like a horrible Rotten Tomatoes score right in front of the group. She's like, what's this?
Scoreboard.
And then moonwalk out of the room.
Yeah, got him. Yeah.
When it comes to celebrities, the best way I can describe it is I didn't know that these people were so well known until I was told.
Oh, okay.
But I also didn't know very much about the fields that they were coming from.
Yeah.
So
this would be somebody like
they're not
like
names
Bill,
that you hear.
Like if Billy Mitchell showed up on your doorstep, do you know who that is?
No.
He used to be the Donkey Kong top scorer in the United States.
Donkey Kong
He's not
family.
anymore. I would just imagine that since he got his Donkey Kong high record.
Why do you know this?
Don't ask me. But I would just imagine.
Oh yeah, Billy Mitchell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nobody knows him.
I totally know him.
Hashtag Billy.
I would just imagine since Billy Mitchell lost his Donkey Kong high score, he'd just go on a heroin binge. Like just the
possibility.
assumption. I don't know if they could afford it.
Never
though.
know what throws you over
So yeah, what
the
kind of
edge.
drugs do you see there? What's the most common? Thing that people
At the
come
moment,
in?
it's heroin.
Heroin. Okay.
Very
opiates are
heavy
a bitch right now, dude.
Heroin IV drug use, and a lot of mixtures between that and meth.
Like combining them.
Mm-hmm.
And
What do they call those goofballs? Not a speedball.
speed.
Nah,
I think-
speedball's coke and heroin. I think it's a goofball.
is it? Well, let's ask the professional.
Yeah. What is it?
That's a great question. I don't know. I've never done those.
Goofball. Google it, Justin. What is
Never
it?
done heroin
Goofball.
or
Yeah,
meth.
goofball versus speedball.
Yeah, look that
Goofball
up.
versus
Put that
speedball.
in.
All right.
Yeah, this is
Hey,
what.
it auto popped. So let's see. Like the first one.
He's done this
Speedball
before.
or goofball, you decide. I will.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. So when you have like a dual diagnosis client, I guess I should ask, like, how often is somebody coming in that has a pretty bad heroin addiction also have a co-occurring mental disorder?
Almost exclusively.
Oh, all right. What's the most common that you see as far as mental disorders?
Mental health?
Yeah, that would go along with heroin addiction.
PTSD, anxiety, and unipolar depression, typically.
So how much do you guys work on trying to separate whether or not the mental health disorder was sort of kicked off by the drugs, or if it existed beforehand and became and then they use drugs as a coping?
Right.
What do you
So there's, we have, the best way I can explain that is we have this big programming. We have Sunday through Sunday planned out for them. Every single day is planned out. So they will spend 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. in groups. Group, all day long.
Are they allowed to go to the bathroom?
No. And then, yes, restroom is allowed. And then, after they go through all of these groups, they also have therapy sessions one-on-one with their therapist, which is assigned to them when they get there. And then as they're going through these groups, the groups that they're in are things involving, trauma healing. Process groups. They do gender process groups typically too. They also do different age process groups because we have a range from anywhere of 18 years old all the way up to 100.
So
there's 100-year-old heroin dudes?
No, we haven't had anyone that's 100.
Damn.
But it could go up to that.
Just go for it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
at this point,
yeah, bucket list.
you see the Little Miss Sunshine?
But if you have so they're divided by gender, by age, but
for process groups.
Oh, right.
Which is just emotional processing.
So it says goofballs are like slang for barbiturates.
Dude, you were way off, man.
But then it also says under that, what practicing Scientologists ingest, usually in great overwhelming amounts. Yeah, that's what it says, slang for barbiturates.
What's speedball?
That's coke and heroin.
Yeah.
I think it's used interchangeably with meth also, though. I think the two.
So it's just anything you want it to be.
Yeah.
It's some upper with heroin, I
The
think.
upper echelon.
So what's your as far as and I guess I don't know if you guys have outcomes data or anything like that. Anecdotally, I mean, so a client's coming in, this is totally voluntary, they're there for whatever they're doing. I mean, what's the success rate like there? I mean, pretty good outcomes do you see for the most part?
So they're still gathering the data on that because of how new the company is.
Yeah, you said like a year, 2 years?
I've been working there just over a year, but they're just under 3 years old. And they're going to need a good 5-year data for that, just for Brighton.
Do you know what they're doing to gather that data?
So our alumni director works on that currently. And Alumni is actually doing really well right now. Alumni is kind of notorious for not having anyone show up in the recovery
Can
world.
you explain what alumni means?
Alumni is all of the patients that have graduated successfully
That's so
from
weird
the
that they
program.
don't ever come back.
Right. They're just notorious for putting on these events and stuff, like holiday parties and stuff, and having people just not come and meet everybody that they were in treatment with.
That sounds like a lot of extra food then.
I would go.
Brighton, I'll bet they got like honey baked hams too. Huh?
Well, I haven't been to the Christmas dinner yet, but
What, you're not invited?
I'm invited. I'm working. Oh yeah, I'm there.
What, they don't like hold, oh, you're working. Okay, you're
I'm
there.
working on
there.
Christmas. Yeah, it's 24/7.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
They'll make you a plate.
you can't go to the damn Christmas. Here's your plate.
No. I get to go eat with the patients. I can go eat with
okay.
them.
Nice.
I love
I get
patients,
what
not
I want.
clients. You guys don't call them clients?
So there's debate about it. We go back and forth. So what sounds really weird is that for me personally, when they're in residential, I call them patients. When they're in IOP or any outpatient program, I call them clients. Huh. And I'm not sure
Why is there a
where
debate about it?
it's not even a debate necessarily. It's more or less the wording. The wording has changed a lot with Brighton. So we
You
used
guys
to
have docs there, then, right? Oh yeah, they're
medical
patients.
doctors.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So and we have nurse practitioners on staff at all times, and
That's probably where
Med
patience comes
techs
from,
and-
right? Yeah,
Although I think
That-
about like the easiest way to settle an argument is who's gonna win in a fight. Like
clearly.
yeah, isn't that the humane way to settle an argument?
It's definitely.
Say it's clients. That's why it's clients here at Alpha.
yeah. Is it clients here?
I was trying to go with
Yeah.
patience, but Mace beat my ass early on in the formative years of Alpha.
Yeah,
How early on was that? When was that?
2012, September of 2012.
Oh, wow.
that's right.
Yeah, I think we have two, really. We call them dudes more. We usually say the dudes. They help these dudes.
Bros.
Dudes and bros more than clients
Dudes
even.
for us. Yeah.
I might have to start doing that.
Right.
Using my chicks.
So success rates, like in terms of, I mean, so the objective, obviously, if I'm entering into a substance use disorder type of a program, is to not use again, right? Now,
Remain substance free. Yes.
now obviously, I mean, we're just not very good at substance use disorder treatment anyway in America. We're not very good at it at all. But I mean, anecdotally, do you see a lot of success there? Because it's different, because it's voluntary. Criminal justice based models. I mean, there's a lot of problems with those. But I'm just wondering. I mean, what do you see?
The main thing is because it isn't voluntary. So I think that you hit the nail on the head with it, because we're not forcing anybody. There have been times that families have interventions and they fly them out to Brighton and they're there and they immediately leave. And that I see way more often than people that walk in on their own 2 feet.
Like that show Intervention?
Yeah. How does this work? The intervention.
No,
portion?
not the show.
But like that.
Like that.
Where does the intervention happen?
It happens wherever. So sometimes patients or clients have had people in their family get together and surprise, we need to talk to you about your drug use and you need to go now or we're cutting you out of our life.
Just like the show.
Like the show.
Wow.
There are people that are interventionists
The
that do
client
that.
gets there. The client gets to Brighton and just says, no.
Do they have the quote unquote talk about getting gooned? Does that happen at all?
I haven't
Goon
heard
squads?
that.
You know what that is?
That's only for kids, dude.
Is it just if you're underage you get kidnapped?
Yeah. Like so there's Utah has a really I don't know the law. Justin, you might be able to pull it up, but there's a law in Utah basically that if you're under the age of 18 and with parental consent, you can be held at a location against your will. So other states like California or New York that have really affluent families or whatever, their kid doesn't eat his vegetables or whatever, so they'll call a transporting company from Utah to fly out there and then basically goon the kid to come to. They
Literally.
That's a great term.
It's not kidnapping him because the parents are consenting to his treatment.
Consensual kidnapping.
But they literally grab them and take them.
They literally
Right.
in the middle of the night and they fly them to Utah and then they come here and then they do their treatment and then they come to a
Because the only one I saw down
And they're chloroformed first, I assume. Like,
Yeah,
they're poisoned.
Yeah, the only other one I saw was maybe you've seen this where you're working is people would kind of like use blackmail or leverage. It was like kind of sad. I saw this happen a few times, but they needed it. So someone would come out and they're like, "Oh, we're just stopping at this place. Your dad's doing business. Yeah, come with us," because they're 18.
Yeah.
And then I was in some of these, and you're just like sitting there watching, like fly on the wall. And like, "Hey, so my name's so and so. I'm going to be your therapist. Your parents are leaving you here. They just walked out. Like, don't get up and leave." And like we would have to kind of block the door. Like we just let me talk to you for a minute. If you want to leave, you can, but they're not. There's no money. They have your bag. Like you don't have. So they don't have their ID or anything. They're like, if you want to leave, you have to find your own way home. But we prefer you stay.
Can you imagine? Can you so because a lot of the people come that are like not necessarily gooned, they're more like heavily persuaded by their family.
The majority of people, right. So, but the majority of people that come of their own free will and because they want change and they have the intention of change.
Yeah.
But addiction is a really fucked up thing. And the way it works in your brain and in your body, you can have the best intentions in the world, but they mean shit.
Yeah.
So but the choice is definitely one of the main differences in whether someone is successful or not.
It's funny you say that because they're saying they leave almost immediately when they get there because there's no like so if my family does an intervention, says, "Hey, we have this connection with you, we're your support, and if you don't do this, that connection is gonzo. So we're going to fly you out to this place and you got to go there." And if people just bounce, because I think about, I don't know how, you would think that if you get into a like the criminal justice side of things, that clients are compelled, they're court ordered into programming, so they come and they actually complete. But in terms of the recidivism rates, they probably aren't much better because there's a very coercive nature to them.
Right, and I've seen that in my own personal life because my ex-husband was in the drug court program in Utah.
Oh wow!
And completed it and everything, doing killer. And as soon as he graduated, it was time to party.
Yeah,
It was the law was not doing anything for him except giving him a break and showing him this is when you can use again.
Which sometimes that break allows them to get their head straight.
Yes, it does. And I think a big part of that, just from what I've seen, has to do with maturity and age. And there's a huge problem with people that start using, and my ex was using heroin at the age of 12. When you're using at such a young age, and then it gets heavier and heavier, and you overdose and you die multiple times, you are doing something to your brain. And I've heard it said to me many times in my groups, my patients will say, well, we can't help it, Kaitlin. We're stuck in the age of when we started using. I said, but you can still mature.
Well, there's that case too, but you said something important a couple minutes ago that I wanted to circle back around to. You were talking about how addiction is pretty screwed up, and you were saying that people can enter into treatment with the best of intentions and really mean well, and the outcome is they don't end up doing so well a lot of times. But like that's something that we've addressed on a previous podcast. We've motivation to change. There's I think there's this idea out there that people that have these addictions or in our a lot of the guys we work with, there's sexual behavior problems that they're manipulating when they say they want to change, that they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes and really they're just trying to look for their next fix. And certainly those people exist, but
Absolutely.
We've seen also plenty that they really do want to change and then they'll continually relapse with whatever they're, whether it's heroin or pornography, whatever it is that we're working on. And I think that writing that off as manipulation or the client is just telling us what we want to hear is a bit short-sighted. And again, sometimes that is the case, but a lot of times addiction's a bitch.
It is.
I'd say the most of the time, the majority of the time, if a client's coming to you and if I've been on if I've been using heroin since I was 12, and how old was your ex when he started drug court?
When he started drug court, he was 19. Took him 2 years. Okay,
so 19 years old. I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm like, frontal lobe's not even finished developing, and I'm telling you, I really want to stop, dude. I really want to stop. I don't think that person's lying. I would say the vast majority of the time. If I'm not going to say always, because that's just too much of a generalization. I'd say the vast majority of the time, at that moment, that person's telling you the truth. I think they're being genuinely sincere. It is, though, however, an underestimation of how serious of a problem this is.
Yeah.
And
the constant vigilance, the nonstop vigilance that it takes to have sustained recovery.
Correct.
Well, that's part of impulse control as well. And I talk to my patients about it, when your addicts are very strong people, when you think about it, they're constantly fighting an impulse that they have.
Yeah.
And that's a muscle that gets tired. Most people have an urge to cheat on their diet, and
their keto diet.
Their keto. And then they fight it, and it's over as soon as they don't have to look at the cookies anymore.
Yeah.
But for addicts, it's not over, even if it's not in front of them.
Right. I had it described to me once by a client. He was telling me, he said, so if you want to know what a craving's like, so go underwater and hold your breath and try to not come back up for air. And that's what a craving feels like sometimes. He can't really explain it, but if he could explain it, like the desire to get to that air at one point or another is how they feel about needing to get. So what would you chalk it up to? Obviously you probably had an insight into this that others didn't. So he successfully completed drug court and not long thereafter he relapsed. What do you think happened?
I think myself and him both happened.
Yeah.
Together. We were 21 and we wanted to drink, and it went downhill from there because the drinking, and this is pretty common actually with heroin addicts, they will sometimes switch from heroin to alcohol. It's a depressant on the brain, and it works really well, and it's easy to get. It's really accessible. And then at a certain point, when his mental health started to take a huge dive, it increased heavily until he ended up going to his third or fourth, something like that, treatment center.
Wow. That's really unfortunate. I think, though, part of it seems to me, and I don't know what you guys think about this. So I think of a client's entering in the criminal justice model, which, by the way, I was looking through the Surgeon General's report for 2013, and it had past months rate of substance use among people aged 12 and older from 2002 to 2014, and they said binge alcohol use and illicit drug use. So in 2002, the binge alcohol was 22.9%, and in 2014, it's 23%. And 2002, 8.3% for illicit drugs, and then 10.2% in 2014. The funny thing about this is so roughly we spend about $400 billion a year for criminal sanctions on substance use disorders, and it's remained completely flat for 12 years. Like
$400 billion?
$400 billion per year on that. Which, there's a lot of... Well, and so the Surgeon General's appeal here is that this needs to be treated like a public health crisis rather than a criminal justice problem.
Oh, yeah.
And because, and you're just looking at that, I look at those numbers and I say, well, you're not getting any better. The criminal-based model is not helping this whatsoever. It's not getting you out of this stuff. So... you were kind of alluding to this idea that that's, it starts to be kind of I start to use alcohol and that's kind of downward spiral from there. What happens there? Based on stuff that you kind of teach in group, because you meant what's the model you teach in IOP?
The matrix model.
The matrix
as
model.
well as DBT skills.
Right. So, so anybody who's listening to this, the matrix model, the Matrix Institute is at I think it's Rancho Cucamonga, California. And the Matrix Institute developed a program, an intensive outpatient program. They actually sold it to the government not too long ago and was licensed by SAMHSA. It's now put out on public domain, and then they have their own model too. But it's the best, most evidence-based program for somebody with a substance use disorder, originally developed for, I think, cocaine users, stimulant users for sure. Yes. And then they moved on from there. So what's some of the things that you try to teach clients about that helps them understand how serious they need to take this issue?
In IOP, I stick with the matrix model curriculum. But on Mondays, I will teach DBT skills, which is incredibly useful, mainly for borderline personality disorder. But for the matrix model itself, I go over, I like to just generalize it by saying life and social skills. These people don't know how to cope with anything or what feelings feel like. And when they feel feelings, they tend to have a panic attack and decide that, okay, I need to use because that's their go-to.
Because substances help me numb out.
Right.
Right. I'm not familiar with these. I use. Right. I don't have to feel that shit. Yeah.
Right. And they know what works. And they know that the littlest thing can set them off. But one of the biggest things that I attack in IOP is relapse prevention, because relapse is very likely in IOP because they're being held accountable, but they have a lot of freedoms. Right. That's why I love the work. Because I get to see a lot. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that I like about Matrix is it focuses a lot on scheduling and taking up those big blocks of time. So when you're talking about when a client transitions from residential to IOP, and they have these big blocks of time, like I guess I'm assuming that I'll bet you hit that right out the gate as far as, well, what are you doing with your time now that you're not in this 24/7 residential program?
Relapse prevention in the matrix model is broken up into different sections, and there's ER, which is early recovery, and then there's relapse prevention. And I focus heavily on relapse prevention, and scheduling is huge in that, because they say that they have these big blocks of time. But the funny thing is they'll come to IOP and then they'll bitch and moan the entire fucking time because they're there 9 hours a week. And they're like, this takes up so much of my time. I don't have time to go to meetings. I don't have time to meet with my therapist. I don't have time to... I said, what are you fucking doing with your entire day? It's 3 hours.
Well, it's good. It's such a simplistic... It's a
justification, that's all.
Well, it's a really simplistic intervention if you think about it. I mean,
scheduling?
Well, yeah. I mean, so think about this. If I dedicate myself, like genuinely dedicate myself to a schedule, and hour by hour, minute by minute, I've allocated my time to something that doesn't involve substance use, and I stick to that. Well, I'm not leaving myself any wiggle room for emotional decisions to come up. So if I have a block of time, like, I'll figure it out. Well, no, you won't. You need to figure something out. Like, what are you going to do? I even kind of tell clients in the Matrix program, I try to say, are you watching TV? Yeah. Put that in there. It's okay to watch TV. You're fine. Just schedule it. Say that you're dedicated to this, because it rarely is something about, okay, 7 a.m. wake up, 8 a.m. eat breakfast, 9 a.m. do a shot of dope. Like, nobody writes that into their schedule.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's an important piece. I think a lot of times clients feel compelled to fill it up with something, even though they just maybe want to watch TV. I think them hearing that it's okay to veg out now and again, as long as it's structured and planned,
right,
it's fine.
That there's a purpose behind it. So, the thing is I was, it's funny at the halfway house, in the group room that I use, it's almost sometimes like we have wars with the other groups that are in there, because I was talking about like coping strategies, and I wrote video games up there because somebody said video games, and one of the other therapists wrote in parentheses after that, said not one, like that's not a coping strategy. I'm like, okay, look, dude, entertainment is good. Entertainment's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if I'm saying that I'm playing this for entertainment purposes for an hour or two, whatever. Like, do you think because you watch Game of Thrones that night, you're better than that person that played a video game? I'm not a gamer by any stretch. I'm just saying, if it's entertaining and you're minding your business and you're being pro-social and you're not using, who cares?
Dude, if Penguin Land keeps you sober, by all means.
It's baby penguin land, honey.
Baby penguin.
Well, stigma. It's funny because I have clients that say stuff like that. Like, you'll ask them, like, "Oh, what'd you do?" It's like, "Oh, I played video games. I know I shouldn't, but I did." Like,
so why not?
In moderation, yeah. Don't.
Well, and that's
24 hours a day.
Yeah,
don't do
the
that.
moderation thing is important, and I think it's interesting that people will say things like, "Video games aren't okay," or "Watching TV isn't okay." And there's a very fine line between the whole distraction from your cravings and escaping from reality.
Yeah.
That's huge with like, so that I'm assuming you're probably talking about some of those role-playing games. The ones that you can get completely lost
The ones
in.
I love.
Oh, that's you. That's you. So yeah, they can consume you, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You get to be
Because that
somebody
is where
else.
you're living.
Yeah.
You're not living anywhere else. And you can play a video game while still be living in reality.
So if Justin likes World of Warcraft, and
Which I don't. But
he's so for the record, I
Yeah.
don't.
For the record, I don't. I'm not playing it right now.
If he does,
I'm on there.
if Justin's your client, how would you help him differentiate between escaping reality versus just a structured distraction?
If I was dealing with somebody that was just a gaming addict, which by the way, we have had gaming addicts before, it's one of those situations where I'd encourage them to make the final decision on what it's doing for them. So I'd have them schedule. That'd be the first thing I do. And I'd also have them not just schedule everything that they have to do, but schedule their downtime. I always tell everybody to schedule your downtime. Do you have a block where you're not doing anything? If you have a block where you're not doing anything and all you want to put in there is gaming, do it.
Yeah, good.
But if you have multiple blocks of downtime and you're going to use that 5-hour period to just game everything away and not even remember to eat, there's that line.
Yeah.
And you can help people find the line just by using simple key words, but they struggle because they don't know and they've never thought about it.
Well, and it's almost like you said, distraction's a key factor when I'm trying to cope with a craving, right?
Mm-hmm.
But distraction relies on that whatever I'm going to distract myself with, I'm genuinely interested in.
Right.
So if I'm gaming, which is fine, I could use that, but I would have to almost deliberately restrict myself from doing that in order for it to be effective. Because if I'm using it for a coping strategy as distraction, well, I can't be playing games and then having a craving. And then I think it's going to go away because, I'm gaming and I'm having a craving at the same time.
Well, and there is that risk of cross addiction.
Right. The method that I was attempting to use to distract myself is what I'm doing right now. Probably not going to be effective. Same thing when I tell clients, well, what are you going to do to distract yourself? Read a book. I'm like, when was the last time you read a book?
Yeah.
When I was 5. I'm like, well, okay.
You're not going to read a book.
You're not gonna read a
you're
book.
not
Yeah.
going to read a book. That's not going to distract you. This has to be something you genuinely like. But you keyed in on something that like even scheduling your downtime, because you were talking about earlier that their inability to deal with, emotional reactions and stuff like that is kind of problematic, and their impulsive side of their brain doesn't know how to do this very well.
Right.
And it's going to default to using more than not. And so there's kind of a concept in Matrix like this be smart and not strong.
Be
narrative.
smart, not strong.
Can
is
you
my favorite.
explain that a little bit?
So the idea of being strong is, and I love to talk about it with my patients, since I always start by saying, how many of you have tried to quit using drugs all by yourself? Every hand will raise. Because nobody takes their first drink or their first shot and walks into rehab and says, I need help. Someone save me. Because you're going to try and white knuckle it. You're going to try and stop because I'm strong enough and I have enough ego and pride to win.
Or downplay that it's a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell yourself that, you know what, I'm only going to use enough. Like, I actually had some friends that would use 3 times a week, because any more than that a week and they'd start getting dope sick.
You're a junkie.
Oh, God. Oh, the stigma.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting is 3 times a week turned into 4 times a week, turned into 5 times a week, turned into 5 times a day. And then they end up back in rehab.
Right.
They do not have the willpower, period. Right. So to be smart about recovery, all that means is to keep yourself away from the things that are going to trigger the fuck out of you until you have some sobriety behind you.
Right.
And someone in your corner.
So not deliberately exposing yourself to triggers that are going to activate a part of your brain that, I mean, you're going to have a losing argument with.
Right.
Like even if you're attempting to talk yourself out of it, it's not going to happen. And I suppose that's not to say that people historically haven't white knuckled their way through. They certainly have.
They
People
have. It's dry drunk syndrome.
Sure, but I think that's big time exceptions. Like that's
and it's also miserable if you think about it. All you're doing is you have all the same behaviors, all the same traumas, all the same pain without the thing that was covering it up.
Yeah,
that's all you have.
You know what story I like to
worse.
tell? You know what story I like to tell
right?
clients?
You might as well be getting drunk.
Seriously.
The story I like to tell clients when I'm using that analogy, the be smart, not strong. I always tell them about that time you and I tried to move that bar downstairs.
Yeah,
dude, we had this
story.
bar, and I bought it from this guy, and it was really cheap. It was only $150, but it was a nice bar. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we went out and picked it up, and even then, I was like, "Oh my god, this thing! That had to have been 500 pounds.
It was
heavy,
very
heavy." And we got it in the back, and so like, we were trying to move it downstairs, really narrow stairs, and we called on our friend who is late to everything on this planet. And
because he's playing World of
Warcraft. So I blame it on that. But Jeff and I, a couple meathead losers, were like, okay, we can do this. We can move this 500-pound massive thing down the stairs. And I remember our approach was so stupid. Like, it was so stupid. So I got down on the stairs, and so the stairwell's right here, and there's a wall on the stairwells. And then there's a huge wall over here. So there's kind of like an overlay thing. And we started to go down, and I just had it like in a shoulder press. This
oh my God.
Like a shoulder press. And then Jeff was supposed to somehow get behind that or something. But why you got to the point where you couldn't do anything?
Yeah, the size of the bar made it so that based on your staircase, I could no longer grip it
right
in any capacity.
And so I have this 500-pound object above my head, and I'm like, and my arms are now shaking, and I'm like, what am I gonna? And Jeff's like, dude, this is what you got to do. You got to just drop it and run. I'm like, what? Like, there's no way to do. I'm gonna die. Like, today is gonna be my last day on earth. And again, it sounds corny, but it's super scary. And then right then, our friend rolls in. Oh, what's going on here, guys? I'm like, help me. Right? And I think, like, we were not intelligent about that at all, and we tried to think, okay, we're just going to willpower and strengthen our way through this, and we almost got really hurt off the whole thing, and it would have been really. I don't know if that's a great analogy for clients.
No, it is, because
like,
how much ego played into it.
Tons.
It was
ego will destroy you in recovery.
Right.
You saw us before this podcast got started. Like, Mason and I get ramping each other up with all these stupid challenges. And, like, it's all ego.
Yeah, it is.
Well, kind of the be smart, not strong. The way I share it is just. I mean, here I go talking about the diet again, but I'm really good at meal prepping, and I count on it to help me actually stick to what I'm doing. So, I pack up a little cooler with me, bring it to work, and what that does is it eliminates me having to choose what to eat once I'm hungry, because it's already there. It's already packed up. The decision's been made for me. It was made first thing in the morning when I threw the ice pack in the cooler along with the food that I prepared. If if I didn't have that option, certainly there's still healthy options out in the community. If I, just want to go out and get something to eat. But when I'm hungry and I'm driving by Five Guys and it's like, okay, I go to Five Guys, or I could go to Kneaders and get something on a lettuce wrap. Like, I'm going to Five Guys.
Right.
And that's because willpower is fleeting. We don't always have our ability to stay strong 24/7.
No, and there's a science behind what you're talking about too. And I don't know if you guys watch TED Talks, but there's a science of happiness, and he talks about that same thing, where when you are given so many different choices, you're going to ultimately be unhappy with your decision. Because there's just so many different options available to you.
So abundance of choice leads to...
And choice in the good old US of A is the idea of, freedom of choice. That is what happiness is. But this guy is finding that happiness is actually when you are given two options, you pick and you can't go back. They're happy with that.
I follow that.
I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. Right. Because it's the regret and the what if that makes people feel miserable about themselves.
Yeah. I believe that. Just think about phones. Like, you get a phone and then 6 months later, a new one comes out. And I got to get the new phone. Then you feel like left out, like something's wrong if you don't have like a new car or a new phone or whatever. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I've had a lot of patients fight me on that very idea and be like, that video's stupid. That guy's annoying.
Why?
That was awful.
Right.
I was like, what about the content, you fool?
Yeah.
What do they not like about it?
They don't like the idea that he's right about it. They want to be able to choose. They're like, okay, so the guy gave an example of, I can't remember who it was, famous guy. He saw a McDonald's burger stand, McDonald's Brothers, and he wanted to invest in it. And he went to his brother, needed $3,000. His brother said, no, are you crazy? Nobody eats hamburgers. Another guy comes around, same idea, buys the stand, franchises it, and is now a billionaire, right?
You're talking about the founder?
The coach?
Dude, have you... No, that's not it. Have you seen...
I think it is.
For the McDonald's people?
Yeah.
No, man. You need to
What's his name?
Watch the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton.
That.
With Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
And that's what you got out of it?
Guy's last name? Isn't it Koch?
My God.
Guy's last name?
You're such a loser.
What's his last name?
I'll look it up now.
Yeah.
Oh, my dude.
You should
They don't-
Talking about the Koch brothers?
You should have just said you haven't seen it.
They don't like that. Patients don't like that idea. Because they're like, there's no way that he's actually happy. Because what they did is they got an interview with the guy that missed out on that deal. Croc.
Give me a
Is it
break.
Croc?
Retract your statement.
Oh.
That was pretty
Coach and Croc are two...
Retract your
Croc.
statement.
He was close.
That was... Give me a break. Retract your statement.
Nope.
Oh, boy.
Well, another problem with that, though, too, is people think of happiness as this, like, perpetual state. You just stay there. Like, if you're happy,
Oh,
someone
yes,
who's happy,
absolutely.
you're happy all the time. No, you're not. It's
I
gonna
literally
come
just
around.
said that yesterday during group. I said, why do we feel like happiness is so elusive? It's because we expect it to be occurring 24/7.
And if it was, it wouldn't be happy. It
No.
would just be normal.
And and addicts have the issue of the huge mood elevation and then drops. So they're not used to the dullness of the in between.
Yeah.
They're used to the high or the
and if
low.
I'm sad or anything else, that's a bad thing.
Well-
That's
Right.
a bad emotion. So I don't want.
And I
bad.
can't
wanna
feel it.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think a better approach to that, if you're, a therapist working with clients, is stop labeling emotions as good or
Yeah.
bad. They're just emotions. And
That's
the
DBT. That's what DBT does too.
I'm not a big believer in DBT. DBT is just no. Don't get me
Way
wrong.
better than CBT.
I love
Don't get me wrong.
DBT.
DBT, yeah, you're right. I love it too, but it's not really DBT. It's just CBT with another name.
It's like a better CBT.
Almost as good as, like-
It's like, well, and the only
an
difference I've
enhanced CBT.
seen with it, and I asked my
Yeah.
boss, I said, what's the difference between DBT and
I'll
CBT?
bet he gave
and
you
he
a
said,
bullshit answer.
He said, a letter.
Oh yeah, it's
Right.
Pretty true.
That's what he said.
Exactly. That's pretty true.
That's what he said.
Well, no. So the idea that emotions are just generic, and I get to make what I will with them. The funny thing is sometimes I've seen people in their most down and out moments when they're coming in, and happiness is contingent on contrast. Like I can't have happiness without sadness. I don't know. I wouldn't have a concept of happiness without sadness.
Yeah.
Perpetual happiness is not reality because I have to have sadness to get in there. So the idea, I think, if I can coach a client to understanding that, look, man, you are poised to experience life on a level that I never could experience. You think about a kid who grew up never had to worry about anything, graduated high school, went to college, makes $60,000 a year, leads a relatively mediocre life. I'm not talking shit on anybody who makes $60,000 a year. I'm just saying, you get my point, right? And they've never really known struggle. I'm just going to tell you, life is not nearly as sweet as somebody has come back from the depths of hell and crawled out of that. Like, and we don't even celebrate that. We don't celebrate people who never had problems. Yeah. You know, like, it's not like hey, you want an award? You know, people who get a lot of recognition have had really hard times and bounced back from that. Sure. So the idea of contrast, my ability to get from this, and I tell this about parents too, because I deal a lot with, like, when I was doing family drug court, I had a lot of moms who were very shameful about these things. And I said, look, the word mom and dad will have so much more meaning coming from your kid's lips than it will any other kid that's coming. It'll have 10 times the amount of meaning because of what has had to go through for life. This is a huge gift sometimes in that you can embrace if you take it to the next level and do that. Like, that's, and they really like hearing that's the idea. Like, those things are really important, that contrast pieces. So rather than trying to, I'm not going to deal with this emotion, dude, man, anxiety, sadness, all that sucks. That's horrible. Okay. I'd prefer it not to happen, but I think learning to embrace that and living with it,
allowing
and
it.
And just writing it out, and then knowing that, okay, again, now this has made my ability to be happier in the future much greater. My levels of happiness have now gone up. That's
one of the biggest things for me. I struggled with anxiety big time through, like, my early mid-20s. One of the things, just researching on my own how to handle this kind of a thing, that was one of the biggest things I read. And I remember reading it, I thought it was crazy at the time. I just said, like, no, embrace things, like, allow it, don't fight.
Radical acceptance.
That's totally one of the things that started to turn it around for me. Like, I haven't had a big panic attack since then. It used to be, I would have this small, like, oh crap, there it is. Like, I could feel it. And then I would talk myself into it. Like, oh my God, I'm going to freak out.
Like, you're panicking because you think you're going to panic.
I panicked because I was worried I was going to panic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead it was just more like now it'll happen. I'll notice, like, the feeling of anxiety coming in. It's just like, oh yeah, there's anxiety. Now I'll kind of think, like, oh, what's going on? Does something need attention? Or is it, hey, it'll go away. And it usually just does. It doesn't turn into a full-blown thing, but it's more of like, I allow it. Oh, that's it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's the whole act of trying to control and manipulate the emotion. Sure. Make it better or make it worse or make it go away, when all we really need to do is just let it be what it is.
Yeah, which takes a lot of practice.
Which is just an emotion, right.
Yeah.
Well, so how do they respond? I mean, do you guys very much support, like, this idea that this is, I mean, medical science has kind of bared out that this is now a neurobiological disorder, right? This is a disease that I'm dealing with. How do clients respond to that on your end?
The majority of clients are okay with it, which is actually surprising to me. I have had 2 or 3 very serious holdouts. Stop saying it's a disease. It's not a fucking disease. This is stupid, and just getting incredibly angry about it. Yeah. Because that disease portion gives the idea in their head that I can't control this. I have a disease. Well, it's like cancer, and I can't help that I have cancer. Well,
do they like AA meetings then?
No. Same people that fight the disease idea hate AA and God.
It's so... Well,
or higher power. You know what I mean? Like the whole third step, second step, all of that.
Well, the funny thing is I think the messenger is the problem with that, not the message. Because, okay, so if you, I mean, as a therapist, like, how do either of you feel when so the first step is I have to admit that I'm powerless against my I'm butchering how that goes, but that's kind of the first step. I'm powerless against my addiction. How do you guys feel about that?
I'm not a huge fan of the 12-step.
Right.
Well, it's kind of like with sex offender treatment, denial is typically the first thing that's confronted in traditional sex offender therapy, and having them be responsible and accountable for their offense, and they just might not be there yet.
Right.
And so same principle. Yeah.
So let me help draw a distinction on this. So I'm powerless against my addiction, right? Which, again, now when all this came out, and this whole idea of being a disease is not new. I mean, this started in like the early 60s when they were kind of trying to go, alcohol was a big problem and everything back then. But so so just bear with me here. Follow me along here. Do you ever, when you step out of your house, do you worry about breaking your femur?
No.
Why not?
It's unlikely. I've never done it before, and I don't think there's any situations I'd put myself in to do that.
What if you did break your femur? What would you do?
You mean after I got help, you mean, or?
So what would you do? First thing,
get help.
Get help. Where would you go?
Hospital.
Does part of the fact that you could go to a hospital help you not worry about breaking your femur?
Yes.
Okay, so knowing that now look, imagine a world without doctors. Breaking a femur is life-ending.
Yeah, that's
you're dead.
Literally crippling. You're done.
You're dead, right? So one thing I encourage clients to see about this is powerless. Don't look at it like I'm powerless against this. Equate that to not without assistance. There are things that you can't do without the assistance of a doctor. So rather than powerless, not without assistance. Okay. So
that feels way better.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what somebody's trying to say. I'm powerless without assistance to deal with this. I mean, you're sitting in my group, homie. I mean, not without assistance are you going to be able to get through this. So the other message is too, higher power, right? And sometimes people say, well, what if I don't believe in God? And then the thing is, well, your higher power can be anything and you get that tree out there. I'm like, you want me to worship a tree, right? So, I mean, why do you think why would you have a problem with that? It's like, oh, you got to hand this over to your higher power.
Well, I mean, a lot of people bristle at it being counter to their belief system. They feel like something's being forced on them.
Right. Well, and again,
it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. So this is why I say, consider your higher power to be more than just me. That's all I'm asking you. Think about this.
You're not the center of the universe, right?
Right. Higher power means more than just me. If I get sick tonight, if I had a cough, I mean, if you did, what would you do if you had a cough?
I would take the day off tomorrow.
No, you get some medicine?
Clients. I'd get some NyQuil.
NyQuil, right? Out. And even after you got like all the sickness, you keep drinking that NyQuil, right?
Get robo-tripping,
right? Think about
old school formula.
Now think about this. Now this is kind of cheesy, but think about it like this. It's pretty damn amazing that you can buy that NyQuil. I mean, could you make NyQuil?
Not a chance.
No, you couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't make NyQuil. And the fact that
motivation. That's all you need. You have to cough real
well,
hard.
The funny thing is like somebody's like, oh no, there's a YouTube video on this. I'm like, well, yeah, but dude, you'd have to spend way more money to buy all those products to make NyQuil.
Get your own dextromethorphan.
Right. I can buy. Yeah. You might be able to make NyQuil, but you probably can't. The fact that NyQuil exists, the fact that there's a factory somewhere that somebody put all those chemicals together to put on that shelf that was $5.
It's
and
assistance.
If you get the Western Family version, it's $3. You know what I mean? More than just you contributed to your ability to be symptom free for tonight, so you can go to sleep. More than just you.
That's great.
Right. And if you bring those analogies out, I think clients hear that and it's like, oh, 12-step ain't so bad anymore. But the messenger that you go there, they're really kind of preachy sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the equivalent of, well, I went to school with this kid. And he was LDS. He was a real asshole. So I hate all LDS people. I'm like, you're an idiot.
Thanks, Cartman.
I mean, don't.
Well, even, I mean, this is like a real brief segue. I'm reading this book right now called Tribe.
How is that?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the points that the author is Sebastian Junger with a J, he makes is that people exist a lot better in collectivistic environments and have less incidence of mental health problems. And a lot of the things that we pride ourselves on in the United States here is individualistic freedoms, and which I think is awesome, by the way. But it detaches us from the greater whole, and kind of a lot of that tribe mentality, that tribe mindset, kind of having, in other words, a support group, right? That's what we're talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
And that can be a higher power as well. I guess there's multiple ways to pitch this to clients, whether we're talking about your tribe being your higher power, or the not, how do you put it? Not without assistance.
Not without assistance.
AA says it too. They say power. The first step of AA is admitted that we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. Uh-huh. And they say powerless but not helpless.
Right.
That's the main thing for them.
Helpless.
Not helpless.
Yeah.
Meaning you can't just give into this. You can't just fall apart. You're powerless over your addiction and your life has become unmanageable, but you're not helpless. And I struggled with that same exact thing for a long time because I hated AA. I was like, AA is a cop-out. All it is you saying, I have a disease and I can't help it, so it is what it is. So fuck everybody. I'm going to do what I want.
On the surface, it appears
that way. But as I went and went, you start to learn and you start to hear and you start to read the fucking shirts that they're wearing that says powerless but not helpless. And I was like, oh, wait, what the fuck is that they're wearing? Yeah. That makes so much more sense.
It's weird, though, that like because this has some crossover with like mental health, that somehow we don't link that equivalent to physical health. So if we have a disease, and think about that. If I have a disease, nobody says, well, I guess I can't do anything about it. I'll just die. No, you don't. You go to a doctor, you take meds, you do all kinds of stuff, and we treat it very differently. And I think so I think clients normally are really, really responsive to this. If you kind of break it down, and one of the things that they've kind of talked about is how I've kind of hijacked the survival mechanism in my brain. So if I think about the survival parts of my brain, I need food, I need water, I need air, used to need sex, these things that the frontal cortex of my brain don't control. These are survival mechanisms. I'm going to be compelled to do them no matter what, right? And now I've added a new category in there. I've modified my brain chemistry by using so much that now drugs have entered into this survival category. So again, it's kind of like, could you just choose to stop breathing and hold your breath until you died? No, because even after you passed out, your body would reinitiate that. And so you have to take it as seriously as that, because now I'm in there. But comparing it to a disease, it's interesting to me that clients love to hear that, because they're like, oh, okay, somebody's finally getting me, but they don't treat it the same way. Because judges sometimes and, law enforcement, they're like, no, it's not. It's a choice. Well, compare it to like I think we should talk 400 billion, right? So you think about the public costs and taxpayers of heart disease. Any idea what that is? 555 billion per year is what we call public costs, not private insurance costs, public costs. And they said with how this is increasing, by 2035, it's going to be 1.1 trillion per year. For heart disease. Now just look at these two things. Heart disease versus substance use disorder. Genetically, predisposition about equal, about 40 to 60%.
Really?
40 to 60% predetermined. Now, again, that's not a guarantee. I'm not saying I'm saying that you have some genetic markers that predisposition you to have heart disease or any of those things. Okay, so far so good. Genetically, we're on the same level. So if you think about a relapse is just a medical term of going back to whatever it is, right? So if I have high blood pressure, I have some angina or whatever that is, and that's a relapse according to my heart disease model. If I'm not taking my medication, I missed that a couple times or something like that, and I have to go back to the doctor. Okay, I've now relapsed on what my treatment plan was.
Sure.
So relapse rates among heart disease patients are equivalent to those of substance use clients. Okay, so relapse rates are equivalent too. So then they say, all right, so what about the behaviors? Man, you had to choose to get to have a substance use disorder. Okay, that's fine too. But are there behavioral decisions that I can choose to have a heart disease? Like what?
Smoking.
Smoking, eating like crap,
exercise,
not exercising, doing the keto diet. Right.
Oh God.
So
dude, actually,
there are
how many times that was said.
There are behavioral decisions that I can make. There are behavioral decisions that I can make that can literally move myself into having a heart disease. Okay, we'll back off that. Then they go moral and they say, well, when you get high, it feels so good. So you're getting pleasure out of that. And that's why it's not a disease. You're getting pleasure out of that. That's it. Nobody likes having a heart attack and say, okay,
we like to shame.
Well,
we like to shame pleasure.
Well, here's the thing though.
Not all pleasure.
Where'd the term comfort food come from?
Well, I mean, it seems self-evident, but I suppose you have an answer.
Do you not experience pleasure eating that shit?
Oh, yeah.
Of course you do. So pleasure is the only component that's out of there. So the funny thing is the fact that it's criminalized is why we don't treat it like a disease. Because I could make the exact same argument to the community to say, look, 555 billion folks, we got to lock Jimmy up, because if we don't lock Jimmy up, he's going to die from this heart attack. It's in his own best interest. So we stop him from eating all that shit he's shoveling into his mouth every single day, right? We got to lock him up for his own good. and I'm doing exactly the same thing. If I criminalized heart disease and criminalized eating like an asshole, which they kind of do, like New York, they're putting, you only get so much soda or whatever. They're kind of moving in that direction because of how much it's costing. And I criminalized it now. What's the difference between heart disease versus a substance use disorder?
Wow.
I mean, sure, dopamine output from a meth shot's probably way higher than eating a Twinkie, right? Obviously.
So there's no argument then when it comes down to people with heart disease are not stealing from people. They're not raiding houses. They're not.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
So, but what I'm saying is the fact that drugs are criminalized, and I'm saying,
right.
if you did and I'm not saying make them legal. I'm saying decriminalize them.
I completely agree.
The element of that now is gone.
Right.
So the one deciding factor that in my mind as a client that would separate this as a disease versus that this is a behavioral decision is now it's criminalized. And so if I engage in this behavior that's criminalized, I'm not going to treat it like a disease. And think about the language we use. Like you said, discharge, like we use graduations. When do you graduate from heart disease? When do you graduate from having cancer? Do you not after you you're cured? You go on. You got to
maintain.
You're going to come for every single
exercise.
Checkup. You're never going to miss an appointment. The language that we use is insane when it comes to people who have substance use disorders. You graduate. You don't graduate from this disorder.
Mm-hmm.
We preach to you for 3, 4, 5 months at a time that this is a lifelong disorder. Like how long was your ex-husband in drug court?
2 years.
2 years. 2 years. This is a disorder. It's going to be with you for the rest of your life. You graduated. Like,
no wonder he went back. I mean, I'm sure there's other.
You see what I'm saying?
Factors,
like I say to clients more than anything, I love that you hearing this a disease. You need to start treating it like a disease. You need to take this seriously as if it was cancer, as if it was heart disease, or if it was diabetes or whatever. I mean, it's like I graduate from diabetes class and then I don't need to take insulin shots anymore. I mean, get real, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Twinkies.
Right. Everybody needs to take it way more seriously.
Yeah, they're trying to change the verbiage over at Brighton because of that too. Because of everything you said.
Oh yeah. That's golden.
The difference
You're going to
between
steal that,
discharge and graduate.
You're going to drop what I just said on your group.
You know what they did? They changed coin out to coin in.
What does that mean?
They used to coin out, like they'd pass around a coin. You press something into the coin. You say some good words
That's
for
just
them.
Gross. That's so germ. Think of all the germs. I would
Brighton
deliberately
babies.
go to the bathroom
Come on.
and not watch my Brighton
That's a joke. Brighton babies. But they changed it to coin in because you're coining into your next phase of aftercare. Of aftercare.
Wow.
Little change.
Dang.
Yeah. That's a wild thing. Substance use is a crazy, because I think we're just, until we crack that, man, we suck
prevention is just as crazy too. It's a whole nother world.
Come on now. Nobody who ever graduated DARE ever used drugs.
That's true. Their success rates are right around 95%.
DARE was awful.
Officer Gallegos, he was awesome though.
Drug boards were awful.
It was more like they were talking crap. They all dare to keep kids off drugs. Like, you can't. They're just going to use it anyways.
Dude, I know.
That's pretty much what happened.
That is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, if any of you guys have a chance to, anybody listen to this, Google or go on YouTube and do Hot Pursuit DARE video. It's the most awful video. Well, it's really cool and awful at the same time. But I mean, you know what was the best like introduction to, like, if I'm just educating a bunch of students, was up at Weber State. Actually, I think you were there. It was an orientation. Or no, you weren't there. I was with Ames. We went to go see that, and we're listening to this guy, and he starts talking about meth. And the way he was talking about it, he's like, yeah, when you smoke meth, it's highly sexualized. Sex is great. You can get a lot of work done. You stay up, and like he's just rattling off all these good things.
Lovely.
And I'm like, is this guy going to sell us this?
Sounds all right.
And then he said, and then he said all the bad things that come from it. And the thing that I appreciated about that was,
so it's true.
He gave me everything and then said, it's your choice. Rather, like DARE, I think the approach is, like, I'm not going to educate kids on all the good stuff that come from drugs. I lie to them. I'm not lying to them. Obviously, drugs are bad. I mean,
Well, they'd list the symptoms or like the effects that drug give you, but they'd spin it in a negative way.
Right. But then when I see
like nauseous and dizziness, like, well, maybe that's euphoria and feeling high and great. I don't know.
Dude, if you they make it seem like, okay, if I smoke this one joint, bro, I'm hop, skip, and a jump away from laying in a gutter with
the girl that's flat
syringe.
up against the couch.
That's right. Kind of almost a glimpse of like that reefer madness stuff.
Yeah, and you'll never be successful in school. But then I see old Jimmy. I don't know why they're always named Jimmy, but Jimmy, who's smoking weed on the weekend, and he's playing football. He's got straight A's. I'm like, liars. Like, I was like, I'm gonna go smoke some weed with Jimmy. You know what I mean?
He's got to figure it out.
And the weird thing about it is most people will just smoke that weed and have fun and never move on. And there's a fraction of people where, that weed is not going to be enough. So it's kind of that whole gateway drug argument. Not really.
Yeah,
that's just stupid. Right. I mean, the same thing like with our clients that you watch porn, eventually you're going to be watching child porn. No, you're not. That's not what happens.
I heard somewhere that inhalants are actually closer tied to being a gateway to harder drugs than marijuana is.
I don't think the gateway drug holds any water. I don't think that's true whatsoever. I think what it is if I have that genetic component that I'm susceptible to this and I use, I've now started off this compulsive side of my brain that says I always want more. Yeah. And eventually it's not going to be enough until I have to start graduating up to different things. And that's where it kind of becomes a problem. Opiates are kind of a different thing because that's a whole other freaking podcast, dude. But if you ever, there's a book called Dreamland about how the opiate crisis came about in America. Have you ever read it? You need to. It is
I read Heroin Diaries.
Fascinating. It is. It's written by a journalist who kind of. It's crazy how that came about. But I mean, that's a wild thing, man. This whole substance use disorder. I mean, we have not mastered it whatsoever. No, not one bit. So,
can I end on a joke?
Yeah,
I got a joke for you.
Is it dirty?
No.
No, is it funny?
I think it's funny. You guys heard the drug board joke?
No.
Okay, so they used to pass out drug boards. You guys know what drug boards are?
No.
Okay, so
like a Ouija board?
No. It was a board with pictures or actual drugs taped to it that they pass around classrooms.
Oh, yeah. Right.
For prevention purposes,
yes.
right?
Okay.
I used to work right, and what it smelled like, what it felt like. I worked in substance abuse prevention before addiction, so this cop comes in. He comes in and he's got a drug board. He's got 7 joints on it, and he passes it around a 6th grade classroom. And they all get to touch it and look at it, smell it and stuff. He gets the board back, and there's 5.
Actual joints. Wow.
Actual joints, and there's 5. 5 left. Okay. He had 7.
So 2.
So he said, okay, I know that I'm missing some. You need to put them back. Right now, I'm going to pass the board around. Last chance. Because if I don't get them back, I'm going to frisk you all. He passed the board around. When he gets it back, he had 9.
Nice.
You ever heard that one?
Right. No.
Good one, right?
Right. Yeah.
I actually heard that was a true story that turned into a joke. So.
Oh.
Wow, that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. We can wrap this up. Well, so what do people need to know about? Like, you have websites or what's the deal?
We do have a website. So it's just BrightonRecoveryCenter.com. If you go into Google, you can find us in South Ogden. We also have a location. It's a mansion, like a reformed mansion. That it's not a monastery in Cottonwood Heights, in a nice gated area with a pool. And then we have intensive outpatient PHP programs, all that kind of stuff. There's a podcast as well that Brighton has.
Oh, okay.
Called Recovery Soapbox. Oh. So, yeah.
Very cool.
All of that.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was fun.
You'll have to come back again.
All right.
Okay.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you, folks.
All right, everyone. That does it for episode 13 of the Guerilla Social Work Podcast. We want to thank you for tuning in. We also would like to thank our guest, Kaitlin, for coming on the show. We had a lot of fun. Episode 14 coming up here shortly. We're going to have some gentlemen on from Triple S. So they're actually going to come on the show, talk about statistics, numbers, all this stuff, research that goes right over my head. But they're going to put it in a much cooler way and talk about how we use that in the direction of treatment, predictions for treatment. So they will be on in the next episode. In the meantime, make sure you check out social media websites, Facebook, Twitter. I was going to say I almost said MySpace. I keep doing that. I don't know why. It's been a few years since anyone's been on MySpace. But yeah, all that stuff. Please spread the word. It's Guerilla Social Work Podcast, Guerrilla, Guerilla Social Work, and we will see you on the next episode.